Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about Amberlynn Reid and her credibility in relation to how she speaks. I do plan on doing some more videos on Amberlynn Reid. I just thought it would be better to kind of compartmentalize them or categorize them, and today I just wanted to focus on this particular topic. So when you're in a conversation or whenever you're giving a speech, or if you can consider this kind of giving a presentation, like making a YouTube video, your credibility is largely determined by how you speak. How you're delivering your message is largely determined by your tone and your pitch. I've seen a few comments say that some of y'all struggled with getting interested in like kind of intro to linguistics, where they talk about physical aspects of how we speak and how like our tongue moves, whether you're making like a retroflexive R versus a flap, and our diaphragm and things like that. But these are the tools that we use to change our voice. And our voice is our device that we're using to relay whatever message we want. And a big component of that is maintaining people's trust. Amberlynn has been accused time and time again of lying, largely because we see her doing opposite things. Like she'll say one thing and then do another. But I do think that the way that she speaks contributes to that credibility component. So first, let's talk about pitch. Typically, when you have a question, you will end it with an upwards inflection. Usually when you end sentences with an upward inflection, you're inviting conversation. You're like wanting more conversation to be had, or you're seeking answers. You're wanting to kind of create a back and forth. I do want to say this does depend on your region. I remember when I lived in Australia for many years, it was really kind of jarring or odd to me, because I feel like, especially where I lived in Queensland, like a lot of people would, their pitches were very different from the States. So for an example, you might hear Americans say like, okay, go ahead, if you want to subscribe, hit the bell button down below. But when I lived in Queensland, it was very like, all right guys, you want to hit the bell button down below? I used to joke that to put on an Aussie accent, you just have to act like someone's poking you. No, you don't. I haven't lived there in a few years, so my accent's probably very rusty, but just to show you that it is different based on what region you're in. The issue here, particularly with Amber, is that when you end a statement with an upwards inflection, and it's not necessarily a question, you can sound really unsure of yourself and really not confident. In general, Amber engages in a lot of uptalk.
So it is 9 o'clock. That means I lasted an hour since I started this little shindig.
Yo, it actually smells like Bora Bora.
It's Bora Bora. So I got this horse crop for when Becky is misbehaving. So I got this toy for Becky.
It's not necessarily bad all the time, but with Amber specifically, because she has such a long history of lying to us, every time she makes statements to try to clarify things that the audience is wanting her to address, like if she does address something that we're wanting, or she's answering our questions, it's really not beneficial for her to sound not confident in what she's saying. And we as the audience pick up on this. That's why a lot of the times when she's addressing things or replying to comments, there's this subconscious feeling of like, well, do you really mean that? Or are you actually telling the truth because of how she sounds when she's delivering her message? I've said this a lot before, and I'm sure y'all have heard this statement before, that perception rules reality. If our perception is different from what she reckons that her reality is, then she needs to determine what action she should take to change our perception, if she wants to take those at all. She's not reliable to the audience to begin with, and this is reinforced whenever she speaks in this way in addressing our concerns. Albert Moravian has a 7-38-55 rule for communication. It's comprised of your words, tone of voice, and your body language, and that's what makes up our communication. Using your diaphragm and breathing properly can affect your tone. Speaking calmly, speaking confidently, speaking full of breath. Your breathing will go hand in hand with determining the pace that you're speaking at, and that can all contribute to how the audience is perceiving what you're saying. There was a 2-year-long study, and the research was published in the Proceedings of Interspeech. This was in 2015, but they found that they were able to predict with nearly 80% accuracy the outcome of a couple's relationship and how good and healthy it would be based on the tone of how the couple spoke to each other. You could argue as well that Amber as the presenter and us as the audience have a relationship that relies on speaking. I will say one of the issues that you come up with when you're talking about like analyzing speech is that if someone is being recorded, they are aware of that, so you kind of have to account for that. It doesn't discount everything that they say to the camera, but it's just something to keep in mind. The other side to this coin is exaggerating certain words or parts of your speech to sound more dynamic or better in your storytelling. If you're a good storyteller, this can come quite naturally, because when you're telling a story, the person that you're telling it to will just naturally feel scared or excited. The mark of a not so good storyteller is if they're telling you a story and they say, oh my God, it was so scary, or oh my God, it was so wild, because they're telling you how you should feel instead of you just naturally feeling it.
And I go, I'm in my mum's car, zoom, zoom, vroom, vroom. And he goes,
you're always just saying stuff that I just don't understand. And then he imitated me and it was just so funny. He's like, what are
I feel like I've heard this quite often with Amber whenever she's telling us, usually it's when she's talking about a medical visit or when she's seen a doctor or when she's perhaps had some success in weight loss, even though if it's been like a few pounds or 1 pound or whatever, she'll say, oh my God, guys, it was wild. It was unbelievable.
And then I just felt binge crazy. Like, I just wanted to binge on everything. So I ended up having pasta. Like, it was a mess. And when I was being super strict on Optavia, I didn't have that urge to binge. I didn't have the cravings. It's wild. It was wild.
I feel like she does this because she wants us to feel shocked. She'll be like, oh my God, it was so weird. I just can't believe that it happened, because she perceives herself as being like unique and like different from a typical situation, I think. So going back to the breathing, I feel like there's two things that I want to touch on. With Amber's breathing, I feel personally, and this is just an opinion, I feel like she changes her pace and uses her breathing, sometimes even in an exaggerated way, to mask her difficulty with breathing.
I'm so glad I started TikTok because it's like an exercise, because these dances, you have to memorize them. And I used to dance when I was younger and I would memorize dances pretty fast, but now I have to like really practice over and over and over.
But I was trying my hardest not to pee today because this is so crazy. Like, why am I like this? Because of my appointment, and I don't pee a lot in one day, let's be honest. Oh my God, this is so bad. The doctor's gonna be like, why do you have so much fur on your shirt? It's whatevs. But I accidentally peed because I really had to.
Obviously she has health issues, so it's going to be harder for her to breathe, and I feel for her. But I know that personally, when I was at my highest weight, I used to do the exact same thing. And I don't know if I was necessarily doing it consciously, but there were certain points in my discussions or like storytelling or when I was talking with friends that I would be like, oh my God, and then this happened. I would exaggerate things that weren't necessarily natural because I was wanting to like catch my breath. There is another YouTuber who I am new to, learning to be fearless. Recently, she accidentally posted an unedited video, and what she was doing in between her sentences is she would take a deep breath, kind of, I guess, like get into character, say what she was gonna say, and then let her breath out, catch her breath again, and then, okay guys, and the reason why I changed my name, blah, blah, blah. There are other videos though, when you listen to Alex, where it seems like she's kind of doing the same thing. It reminds me of Amber because of how overtly breathy their sentences are.
To wrap this up, I also just want to share a couple other styling ways to wear these jeans with like a cool accent belt, because I just think it's such a cool style. And I get asked all the time actually to do more styling videos rather than just doing new hauls. So if you like plus size fashion, don't forget to subscribe because we do a lot of fun stuff here. So I thought I would pull this. Oh.
And I'm not gonna lie, there are times whenever I've had like so much coffee and I am talking so quickly and my heart's racing and I'm like, okay, I need to catch my breath because my pace is off. And that's where like the breathing comes in and making sure that you have good control of your diaphragm. And like, yeah, maybe your heart shouldn't be racing if you are sitting down or trying on clothes. But with learning to be fearless, she also speaks in a very like sing-songy way. And I don't know if she's like nervous. So even though there's a little bit of a similarity to me when I listen to Alex and Amber's speaking with a heavy breath, but when I listen to Amber, I feel very unsure of what she said. Even if I have her playing in the background, which I typically do, even reaction channels, I'll always like to just have kind of playing in the background while I'm doing things. It's so easy for me to kind of be like, wait, what is she saying? Like if I've started to tune her out, and then I'll hear the way that she's speaking and I'll be kind of like, wait, what? Like, what is she saying? And I'll have to back it up because she just doesn't sound legit. I think exaggerating so many parts of her words and sentences also speaks to her insecurity about what she's saying herself. Her pacing doesn't ever seem to be that she's telling a legitimate story, like slowing down on certain spots and then speeding up, you know, creating that natural dynamic. Like if I'm sitting here talking to my best friend, that would naturally happen depending on our conversation. But then in addition, if I have the camera on, I'm going to do that as well. It just seems like she emphasizes everything all the time. I mean, we joke all the time with her being like, actually, you know, typically you place importance on certain words or certain parts of the word. I'm just trying to like make something up out of thin air. So if I were to say, every part of the sentence isn't emphasized. Whereas with Amber, I feel like she'd be like, every part of the sentence is emphasized.
I do want to say that I went through quite a few years of my life eating everything with a fork.
You know, when everything's supposed to be important, nothing's important. When everything's supposed to be given extra attention, then nothing gets attention. Ultimately, I think this is why, even if it's like your first cycle with her, you might start to feel a bit like, wait, I don't know if this is sitting right with me. Like, there's always this bit of caution when you're listening to her, and this bit of like suspicion because of how she talks. So I thought we would take a look at some of the statements that she's making, repeat them in a bit of a different tone or with a different pace, and see if it makes a difference.
All right, guys, so the first video we're going to look at is addressing all of the rumors. I think these types of videos where she is addressing rumors or making statements or answering questions are good examples of where we can pick up on whether or not she sounds like a reliable narrator to us, and other examples of like her pitch and tone that might change.
People just assume that I'm not telling the truth. So the first one is, you are tired all the time. No, I wouldn't say that I'm tired all the time. I do feel like sluggish, but high. My vitamin D is like almost in the negatives.
So I think it's interesting that the very first question she goes to answer in this video, she answers with that upwards inflection, no. And again, it sounds like she's asking a question. She doesn't sound sure of what she's saying. And I don't know if that's because she was wanting to make the distinction between feeling tired versus feeling sluggish. But I feel like that second half of her answer where she says, hi, my vitamin D is, talking about her vitamin D deficiency, was almost in anticipation to people picking apart what she said, or in anticipation to kind of arguing with her audience. I feel like, though, she could avoid this if she were to just have said, no, I don't feel tired all the time, but I do feel sluggish, period. Just leave it at that. Because she sounds very unsure of herself in her answer when she says no, when what you're saying has that kind of inflection at the end, like a question, you're inviting people in. When people hear that, it sounds like a question. So you're inviting people to respond to the content of what you're saying. You're invoking more answers. So it's interesting that she would speak almost in that second half in anticipation to people picking apart or nitpicking what she said. But if she were just to state it confidently from the get-go, she probably wouldn't have to do with that other part.
You didn't understand what the protocol for Patreon really was when you started it. No, I completely understand what the protocol was, but deep down, I felt in my gut that I was making a bad choice, but I still wanted to do it because so many people request to see my poetry and read my writing. And I feel like it would be not as easy for the haters to find my writing if I had people pay for it. And you guys, I'm on social media. This is my job. A lot of people have Patreon. A lot of people sell their poetry. So I kind of just like put two and two together, and I was like, oh, this could be good for me. But then when I realized my gut was telling me no, that I should keep my writing kind of private, I just canceled it.
This is an example of something where I think a lot of people would kind of latch on to when she's talking about the Patreon, because it was kind of a, I don't know if you would say a scandal, but it was a bit of a dramas with how she had it and then cancel it. So if we were just to repeat what she says, no, I understand what the protocol was. Deep down, I felt in my gut that I wanted to do it because so many people request to see my poetry. I felt like it wouldn't be as easy for the haters to find my writing if I had people pay for it. It also almost sounds like she was kind of exacerbating the see my poetry and my writing, like making it sound like it was a lot of things. So even just based on the sound, you can hear the difference of what it sounds like if she were to have stated it like an actual statement confidently to kind of end the conversation or actually answer it, as opposed to sounding like she was wanting a back and forth, sounding like she was not sure of what she was saying and saying it like it's a question. Because again, when we have someone who already seems unreliable in that kind of way, when she talks about how there's a lack of understanding in the communication with her audience and her, I think this plays a major part in it. Obviously, it's silly if people nitpick, but she's kind of opening it up to nitpicking because she doesn't sound like she's answering something truthfully.
You were in choir in high school. I actually wasn't, but I was in middle school.
Something very minor. This is something that a lot of people, and even herself, would feel like it's not a big deal. But it's probably something that people would question if she was telling the truth on, because she doesn't sound like she's answering the question as a statement. She's saying, I wasn't, but I was in middle school. And I know that she could have been thinking about it. She could have been thinking like, wait, was it high school? Was it middle school? Was it elementary school? Like, when was I in choir? So if she were to say, I actually wasn't when I was in high school, but I was when I was in middle school. That sounds much different than I wasn't, but I was in high school or middle school. And again, she could have been thinking about when she was it high school, middle school, elementary school. But she could have even said, I wasn't when I was in high school, but was it middle school? Yeah, I was in middle school.
You're actually still in love with Destiny. This is such... I got this probably more than any other assumption. You guys, I am not in love with Destiny.
Okay, I want to let her finish what she's saying, but just straight away, assumption, in love with Destiny.
At all. In any shape or form. I don't know how many times that I literally have to say it.
It's interesting how often in this statement she is using that up talk. She's trying to say the statement, you know, put an end to it. I understand she was trying to emphasize the at all, but if she were to say, I am not in love with Destiny at all, in any shape, way, or form. If this is something that's coming up over and over again, sounding more confident would definitely help in this situation as opposed to in love with Destiny.
You're going broke. No, I am not. I know how to save money.
So that was actually a really good way for her to answer that question. No, I am not. I, again, think that she was saying that I know how to save money, kind of as biting back to maybe people assuming that she's not good with her money. But because she is involved in so much drama where she's not seen as a reliable speaker, maybe it would have been better for her to say a bit less and just say, no, I am not broke. And just cut it at that instead of saying, like, I know how to save money. Because then people are going to be like, well, do you know how to save money? Look at what you've done with your bank account. Like, it just opens up a whole new conversation. So if she's answering a question, are you going broke? The way that she answered it was very well, no, I am not. And then I would have just cut it at that.
When I moved in with her, or we like moved in together in our apartment, she weighed 181 pounds. And as of today, she weighs 206. So she's gained about 25 pounds. On her body structure, of course, that's really horrible. And I feel really bad. And I blame myself so much. I do. She's never been a healthy eater, though. I will say that. But I feel like it's only gotten a little worse since she's been with me. And I feel horrible about it. Like, and I want her to lose weight more than I want myself to lose weight, because I care about her and love her more than I And when I see her eat something that's bad for her, it breaks my heart because she doesn't understand nutrition like I do, and I don't, like, who's gonna listen to me? Look at me, you know, that's just how it goes.
Okay, so it's interesting that this entire time that she was speaking about Destiny, she sounded very confident. She was speaking in a very factual way. She wasn't using a lot of that up talk or sounding like she was answering questions until she started getting worked up. But as soon as she started getting worked up about, oh, I care about her and I care about her more than me, you can tell that her emotions kind of took over. It breaks my heart. You know, she immediately went into that form of speech. And this is something that a lot of presidents and politicians actually deal with. If you are, or someone is giving a speech and whether they have cue cards or they have an actual full speech in front of them, whether they're reading from bullets or a fully transcribed speech, even if someone's just giving any type of presentation, often what will happen is they will know what they're going to say. They have practiced it. They've thought about it. Maybe they've not rehearsed it. Like, let's say Amber hasn't really rehearsed this, but if I remember correctly, she had stuff written down. I wouldn't be surprised if she had stuff written down before this video, kind of in a bulleted list to think about what she was going to talk about. The issue comes up when someone diverts from their note cards or diverts from their speech that they have prepared. They go from just giving the presentation kind of more like factually, obviously having emotion in what they're talking about because, like, we're human. But what they do is they end up going off script, off the cue cards, speaking from their heart, speaking from their gut, as Amber likes to say, just speaking from emotion. With Amber right here, it seems like she went a bit off topic because she immediately went from making these statements to clarify things to myself. I love her more. I'm the up talk. I love them more than myself. And she's getting worked up, and she's, you know, sounds like she's starting to cry. Whether or not it's real tears, that's not for me to say. But the issue that happens when people do this is they can end up kind of going off of what they were talking about and how they were talking, and then even worse is when they try to get back into their notes or back into where they were in their speech, they really struggle. And that's where a lot of the times, if you hear, you know, again, like politicians or presidents have certain blunders during their speech, or if they say something that's a bit like, whoa, I can't believe they said that, like, it usually just happens when they're kind of speaking off cuff, you know, on a whim, as opposed to sticking to what is in front of them as far as like notes and what they've practiced or pre-rehearsed even in their head. So for Amber going forward, if she ever has to do videos like this again, I would suggest to her specifically to stick to her bullet points, stick to her notes, maybe rehearse it in her head a few times. And she has the ability to cut and edit her videos. If she were to catch herself going off script and going off cuff and giving a little bit too much detail, she can edit that out.
That I was a PCA worker at a assisted living facility full-time, and I wasn't. I was a PCA worker at assisted living facility, but I was not full-time. I worked 4 hours. It started off 4 hours a day for 3 days, and then I got 4 hours a day for 4 days, and then I got 4 hours a day for 5 days. And then eventually I was 4 hours a day for 6 days, and then I started covering a lot of other just random shifts, like 8-hour shifts, and I did a 16-hour shift one time. I was part-time. I was always on call, but I was part-time. I lied to you guys and said I was a full-time.
She goes into this like 4 hours a day, then 5 hours a day, then 8 hours a day. I feel like she's trying to sound a bit exacerbated, trying to kind of pad up what she was doing as far as like considering full-time versus the lie of not actually being full-time. So if she were to just say, I told you guys I was a PCA worker full-time, and I wasn't. I was actually part-time.
Okay. I felt so guilty about my life in Virginia. I lived with my ex-girlfriend for almost 4 years without a job, and I lived off of her parents, and I got a lot of beef because of that online. And a lot of people didn't understand why I didn't have a job at the time and this and that. So I wanted you guys to be proud of me, and I didn't want you guys to think I was some helpless person. And I thought by saying I had a full-time job that it would make me seem like some freaking awesome person, and really it didn't. I don't know why I lied about that. Besides the point is I almost needed confirmation from other people that I was capable to be in this world.
So she's getting worked up. She's starting again with that upwards inflection, sounding like it's a question, not sounding confident, but even the content of what she's saying, explaining and going into why she lied and not understanding why she needs confirmation from the outside world. That's all stuff that we would sit here and say, Amber, you need to speak about that with a therapist. We can hear it in her tone and her pitch and the way that she's speaking. It doesn't sound reliable to us. Unfortunately, it just opens up the audience to talk about that even more and question that even more because it's coming across as a question. So of course, when we hear that, we're going to question it. Not that I'm saying that nitpicking about things is right, but that's what happens when you constantly speak in that way about things that are significant. You know, when you say, I don't know why I was like that, you're invoking a response.
I don't think I've ever tried to justify food. We all know that I know, and you guys know, everyone knows that I am super morbidly obese. That has been what my channel has been about from the very beginning. It's not like I'm trying to hide it. I'm not trying to hide, you know, the binge eating aspect or the emotional eating aspect or the fact that food just in general makes me feel better.
So Shakespeare, that pause. I think that this is an interesting example. I don't know if she's just emphasizing everything to control her breathing better, but as I said earlier, when you emphasize everything, it's like nothing is emphasized. It doesn't sound very genuine. You know, if she's wanting to emphasize a meaning or a significant portion of what she's saying in that statement, then that's what needs to be emphasized. Doing this very slow, like, okay, no, this is why I started. It's like, you know, if she's saying that there's a lack of communication and a communication issue between her and her audience, and her being perceived as unreliable based on what she says. Obviously, her behavior is the main contributing factor to that, because she could say things in the most perfect way. She could say things in the most succinct way and speak very beautifully. But if her actions don't line up with what she's saying, then of course she's not going to be seen as reliable. But if we're just talking about her communication here, then another aspect of what we spoke about earlier was emphasizing everything almost comes across as like nothing is emphasized, and it gets very drowned out. It seems like you're performing or acting. Doing this whole y'all know and I know and we know, I feel like she's also trying to maybe think of an answer. I don't know, but I don't really know what she's trying to emphasize here. She could even just say, we all are aware that my morbid obesity has been the subject of my channel for a very long time. I'm not trying to hide anything with the food. Food makes me feel better, period. You know, I'm kind of lost when you go back and play it back. It's kind of like, what are you trying to say?
And I'm 29 now. I'm gonna be 30 this year.
That was a really odd part for her to speak in that way. 29 now, 30 this year.
About 88 pounds is because of intuitive eating, and my binges would be easily around 4,000 calories at night.
So this is an example of where some people might start doing some number crunching and talking about, okay, how tall is she? How heavy is she? How much is she moving? How much is she eating? Oh, she's lying about binging, or her binging through the day, like doing the distinction between the day and the night and how many calories she's eating. It just opens up so much room for discussion about her weight and about what she consumed. So just there where she was saying 4,000 calories at night, people are going to be drawn to question it because of the manner in which she's saying it. There's something to be said about the fact that she does address the negativity, but maybe another way to deter the negativity is to not say things in a way that kind of invokes people to question things because of the manner in which she's saying things. You know, that might help bridge that gap. I think going forward, it would be better for her to read off of a bulleted list, you know, practice what she's going to say in her head even, and maybe just try to keep things more simple and clean. She doesn't need to always go into the why and the details. I don't think that she should omit things for the sake of like lying by omission or trying to be manipulative by not saying certain things. Whether or not she already does that, you know, that's another discussion. But I do think it might do her well to think about, like, does she need to say, I was binging at night, but that doesn't count what I was doing in the day? Because then people are just going to wonder, what is your distinction between what you're doing in the day? Well, when are you awake during the day? Are you up all night? You know, it kind of is a domino effect. So maybe she, instead of saying 4,000 calories at night and what are we doing in the day, you know, just say over 4,000 calories within a 24-hour period.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, so they give you this 8-month course that you do pay for, which is totally worth the money. It's a great investment, especially if you follow what they're telling you to do and all this knowledge you're learning. So they said in the 8 months I could be 400 pounds, and that was a perfect goal for me because I feel like I could do, if I follow what they're telling me to do, I feel like I could maybe possibly even be less than that. So I'm really super excited for this. Like, I want to take you guys on this journey, and I hope that I can come back to this video and be like, yeah.
She didn't come back to this video and say yeah. See, this is where people get really hung up, because it's like she's trying to be very confident in the words, in the content of what she's saying. You can even see her smiling and getting like excited about this potential goal, and even talking about, oh, I'm going to even lose more than that in 8 months. Coupled with earlier on where she's trying to emphasize that it's not a sponsorship, this is where I would say things start to sound unreliable, because how does she know that it's a great investment? Because then you start hearing her slip in things, if you follow, if I follow. This is a great investment. How does she know it's a great investment? She hasn't even started it. She hasn't even, at this point of when this was filmed, she hadn't even logged food. So she's telling us this is a great investment and getting all giddy and excited about losing so much in 8 months, potentially. And then coupled with the, I could be less than that, like as a question, maybe, like, this is where things start to sound so jumbled and so contradictory in what she says and how she's saying it, coupled with the behavior that she's shown us. This is where the issues of her being reliable really, to me, are highlighted in just little examples like this. Obviously, there's much more to us as the audience seeing Amber as an unreliable narrator, or that we feel something's off every time she tries to address things or retell stories. We have so many years worth of footage of her actions and her words and her cycles and her dieting conflicting, but I do think the way that she speaks is a big component, and it can be very telling as to why we don't feel that credibility or trust with her. I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Bye!